whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako. Kōrero flowing out the hooker force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā kona whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira hira whakarongo pi kari kari mai. Hare hare mai, o Taringa hare hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
Hei ngā kāwai nui, ngā kāwai roa o ngā ihuiho, ngā mau, ngā whakawhiti atu ki ngā wai whakatere taniwha o te ika Māui mai te hiku ki te upoko whakawhiti i te moana raukawa ki te wai pounamu. O tira, puta atu i te moana nui a kiwa, i te tai o Pautini, i te tai o Rehua, and all those other tai if I left any of them out. Woohoo, that was a good mihi. Tai Hoki mai, anei kia Taringa e whakapāho atu nei, from te Ipurau under the auspices of Te Wānanga o Te Aroa, from the bustling
metropolis of Te Awamatu.
Te Awamatu.
Oh,
Me ba. Anei mātau, ko au, ko Praone Gloin, mātau ko.
Te pua Heidi, tēnā koutou katoa.
Erica Sinclair, tēnā koutou.
Tēnā kōrua. And we have a very special guest today. Nā mihi nā whakamānawa kia koe e tai, e mara, nau mai ki tā tātou kaupapa, e Pita Tipene nā mihi nui kia koe. Nau mai, kei a koe.
Tēnā koe kara e Praone, tēnā kaurua, tēnā rawatu koutou katoa e hakarongo mai nei ki enei kōrero mai te pēwhairangi.
Tēnā koe, Ngāti Hine.
Ngāti Hine.
Ooh, and there you go e te iwi, koe nei te iwi, ko Ngāti Hine, te iwi o te Wiki. So starting off, e mara, we're going to start with a kianga that we can share with everybody listening, and then us three here do our darndest to use it as much as we can through it, and we're probably going to murder it to death is what we do, but how tētahi kianga mā tātou?
Oh, it's not really a kianga, I suppose. It's only because the first big rain has come down up here in Pēwhairangi, and the kōrero is taumarere here te riri, te rere tiria, punai ke te riki, ke te tangariki, ko Ngāti Hine puke rau.
Oh, I don't think I'll be using that.
Ooh, that's a very long one.
Yeah, I might be able to do the kiteriki. I got that part.
Kiteriki, yeah.
I like the sound of it though. Can you give us the whakamārama?
Well, what we all know is that we're up here in Ngāti Hine, the valleys of Ngāti Hine, we're putting our noses to the air because we can smell the tuna on the move. As we all know, after the very dry summer and the first rain that comes down, the tuna whakaheke, the silver belly eels, they start moving around in the swamps up here and the Waikiri. If the rain continues, they start their journey down ngā Waikiri, ngā repo of Ngāti Hine, and they make their way down to Taumarere, out to the Bay of Islands, out into the Pacific, and by all accounts, they go all the way to Tonga. And there they spawn, they die, and then the currents bring back ngā heki on the waves until they come back down to the top of Aotearoa, down to the Pēwhairangi. And what we know is when they start getting close into the Bay of Islands, they become glass eels.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
They make their way up Taumarere Awa into the various places. I suppose they're just like salmon. They go back to where their parents came from. And what we know here in Ngāti Hine is that the ones that come up the Taumarere River, they get to various obstacles. And the one right beside, for those of you who have been to the Otiria Marae in Moerewa, Otiria gets its name from the waterfall there, known as Tiria.
Kia ora.
So when those little elvers that we call tangariki get to the waterfall, they start working with each other to get up the waterfall. But the local people, the hatu of Ngāti Hine of that area, Ngāti Kopaki and Ngāti Te, they would go to the waterfall, scoop up all these tangariki and their kits, all sorts of kits, big ones, little ones, and then help them up the waterfall because they knew when they come back, they'll be ready to eat. So I suppose the metaphor behind that action of the local people to help those pipi tuna to get up the waterfall is a metaphor for us to help our young people on their life's journey.
Yeah.
But it's also emphasis that our people all have roles to play, big kids, little kids, and to help these tuna. So look, that's the short and tall of it. But that saying, o marere here here tiriri, the river itself, te rere I tiria, the waterfall at o tiria, te puna I keteriki, there's a puna there that they put the eels in when they got to the top. And keteriki, the small kids. And the kete tangariki, the kete for the baby eels, the peepees. That's a saying from up here that we use regularly to emphasize some of those things that are happening in our community.
Kia ora. Could that also be used as a pepeha?
Yes, very much so. At o tiria marae, the wharekai is called te puna I keteriki. So those names are all very apparent for everybody to see.
You know, I just had a fish pie for my morning tea, but now I'm thinking of eels.
Yeah, tuna.
And what is your preferred method of cooking your tuna, e mara?
Oh, I like them smoked.
I'm a fried man myself.
Yeah, I don't mind cooking them if you cook them up with tea coca.
Aye.
Oh.
Yes. My nan had them boiled, that was it. She'd put them on top of the boil up, if there was a boil up going.
Yeah.
When the boil up was nearly ready, she'd put the tuna on top.
On top,
of
like the
boil.
doughboys.
Yeah, and anyone that didn't like eels, too bad.
Too bad. You got eel flavoured boil.
It's just like on Forrest Gump where he talks about the shrimp.
I love tuna. It's my favourite. I'll have it over everything else. I'll have it over kaura, or have it over... Probably because that's our kai here, because we're inland people too. So,
That's all I find the connection
not
here.
saying we'll turn down some kinas, you know, somebody turns up.
If anyone's got any kina,
Engari, you know, ka whakaro ki te tuna, I think of my uncles taking us out to ki te mahi tuna when we were young.
Yep.
And, you know, listening to this analogy of helping the young up, like how you help the tuna up, sort of reminds me of when, you know, our uncle used to take us out ealing. Ia mātou e tamariki ana. Tēnā koe e hoa tino e rangatira, ko rangatira mātou o tira, ko rangatira ngā taringa, o te hunga e whakarongo ana ki ene, kōrero, e mihi atu ana. I heard you refer to Ngāti Hine, then I heard Ngāti Hine Puke
Aye.
Yeah, Puke rau, hanga pērā ki ana ki te Waikato tani wharau. So on every hill, a rangatira, but more it's expressing our shared leadership approach in Ngāti Hine. So, oh no, look, I hear you talking about the tuna. These particular tuna, though, are ngā tuna whakaheke, the silver belly ones, not to be confused with the kuwharu, or oke, or kirirua, or all those other types of tuna. The prized ones are the silver belly ones.
In our river here, we don't have silver bellies.
Oh?
No.
Well, the kuwharu ones are more generally known as bullyheads.
Engari, e hoa kia mara mai te iwi, share with us the geographical boundaries, I guess, or location of Ngāti Hine. And ko wai a Ngāti Hine?
Ngāti Hine are the descendants of Hine Amaru. So Hine Amaru came over from the Hokianga in the Pākehā timelines, about mid-1600s. And it's not a trip she took in a day. She took it with her whānau over a number of years, staying in a number of places. But eventually they settled in Waihomio. So Waihomio, most people have a fair idea where Waitangi is and the Bay of Islands is. All of our, call it the catchment, empties out into the Bay of Islands. So when Hine Amaru settled in Waihomio, all of us, the descendants who come from her, are the iwi living here. So, yeah, geographically, basically inland Bay of Islands down to Whangarei.
Does Ngāti Hine fall under Ngāpuhi at all, or are you your own separate iwi?
We are our own separate iwi, but we are Ngāpuhi. So all of our blood is Ngāpuhi blood. We all just Hine Amaru descended from Rahiri, who is the ancestor of Ngāpuhi. So, yeah, we all descend from Rahiri, but once you get down to the various branches, Ngāti Hine, ko te kōrero mō Ngāti Hine, ma Ngāti Hine anō, Ngāti Hine e kōrero.
Okay.
Oh, I like that.
Kia ora, ka pai mena kōrero.
Can you share some kōrero about Hine Amaru, the ancestress.
yeah.
Am I right in thinking he wahine a Hine Amaru? Because I know some tāne were named Hine something as well, and some iwi.
Yeah, well, what we have is in our whare whakairo up here, whenever you enter any of the wharehui that have whakairo, Hine Amaru is always on the inside right corner.
Kia
So
ora.
you can go to a Mototou marae or Otiria marae, and being our eponymous ancestor, she has that pride of place. And as a result, we're quite relaxed about ngā wahine tuana ki te kōrero.
Kia ora.
Cool.
Yeah, so is Whanapanui, eh?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
used
there's
to
a
be,
few,
or
yeah.
I haven't seen it down there, but
Oh, if you read in books like Eruera Sterling, his name, Mihi ko Tukutuku, she used
Yeah.
to speak on marae. But
recently, has there been anyone in?
I don't know.
Yeah, listen, I've heard about it like a Napanui and Ngāti Porou, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, I haven't
know.
seen it myself.
What about a Ngāti Hine? Ho, ka kita I te wahine tuana I te marae? Does the woman stand outside or inside?
Not so much in very formal occasions, but, amongst ourselves.
Kia ora.
Tu ngā wahine ki te kōrero. So, Erika, when I said, our connections to te whānau a Apanui,
Yeah.
for instance, in the mid-1930s when Tauhenare, our Member of Parliament, not the more recent Tauhenare, and Apira Ngata worked together to build the whare runanga at Waitangi, they would gather at where I was raised in Mototou. And Apira Ngata said that he would bring the carvers, because at that time, whakairo, the carvings were a thing of the past amongst Ngāti Hine, Ngāpuhi.
Yeah.
But he brought north Eramiha Te Kapua, One Taiapa,
cool.
Pine
One
Taiapa,
yeah.
but another man called Ori Waititi, George Waititi. And all of the timber that was felled in Ngāti Hine were taken to the Mototou marae, and all of those carvings were carved right there on the marae. Now, somehow or other, I don't know how it happened, but George Waititi and the lady who was cooking the kai for them at the time, what resulted is that their first child was born after they got married, and his name was Tukaki. Tukaki Waititi, which will tell you that, yes, people are wondering, what's the Waititi whānau doing in the midst of Ngāti Hine?
Yeah.
Well, that's how it happens. And as a result, both Hori Waititi did those very carvings I was talking about after their son, Tukaki Waititi.
Cool.
Tukaki Waititi.
And that's the name of one of our wharenui in Te Kaha.
Yeah, absolutely.
Che.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That's really cool to know. I just thought you were referring to our front row and our kapa. Got a few ladies from that way in there.
Oh, yeah, so those connections are all over the place. But they're memories and relationships that we treasure up here.
Tēnā koe, and that is one of the most important things of whakapapa is those connections we have through whakapapa.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that Ngāti Hine also has something to do with Mauria marae. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that one's a little bit obscure to me, but we're trying to work it out.
So are they.
Yeah, because what we know is that following pakanga like Matakitaki, is that the relationship between Waikato Tainui and the Hapu and the Iwi down there, they tried to reconcile their differences. And what we know is that Kawiti, who our rangatira of the time, who signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi and then subsequently took the war against the Pākehā at Urua Peka Peka, etc., his son, Maihi Kawiti, as a hohoi te rongo, when Tainui came to Ngāti Hine, a young woman called Heni Ngarino, well, put it this way, she eventually became the wife of Maihi Kawiti. So most of Ngāti Hine is well and truly got Tainui blood through Heni Ngarino.
Kia ora.
And as a result, what you just mentioned, those connections are still not entirely clear. So we intend on making a pilgrimage down Waikato Tainui to find out.
It's interesting we're talking about this, and you brought this up, Erica, because I was in Matata 2 weeks ago at a tangihanga, and a lady from Mauria asked me if I had any mōheotanga because she's writing her doctoral thesis on Ngāti Hine ki Mauria.
Okay,
And
okay.
was asking me about the connections with Ngāti Hine Amaru.
Yeah.
Because I've heard too, Pita, about, because we've got a Ngāti Amaru as well, you'd probably know, at Te Puaho Waikato.
Aye.
And I've heard, again, whispers that there's a connection between, that's the other half of Mauria. Ka rewa mōhio ki nā kōrero, e pēnei anō i au, i a koe kōrero nei. E ne pērā te whakapapa i ona wā he Da Vinci Code.
yeah.
Mā ngā uri whakatupu, it's up to us to sort of solve or delve and look at the puzzle, because their whakapapa can be a bit of a puzzle at time, but once you
Yeah.
get the jigsaw pieces right, then you're away.
Can you tell us about any of the trials and tribulations that Ngāti Hine have faced?
Yeah, well, like most iwi, there's a number of trials and tribulations, but yeah, it's through that type of adversity that we've been galvanised. It's hard to pick out any particular one, but one of the ones, for instance, is Ngāti Hine, whether we like it or not, play a type of leadership role amongst Ngāpuhi. For instance, Kawiti, who died in 1854, was followed by his son, Maihi Kawiti, and then following him was Te Riri, and that was short for Te Riri Mutunga ki te pāo rua peka peka. But they called him Te Riri. While Ngāti Hine has provided leadership over time, they plucked one incident out in 1939 where the whole of Ngāpuhi gathered at Waiomio, just out of Kawakawa. The take on the table was the war that was brewing in Europe. Well, let's just put it this way. After lengthy discussion, Te Riri Kawiti emerged from the whare tupuna and amongst all of the leadership that had been gathered there, and collectively, Ngāpuhi declared war on Germany. This was before the New Zealand government even declared war on Germany. So we were starting up our Navy and Air Force and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what it did is that it said to all of the people in Ngāti Hine and Ngāpuhi, the Māori Battalion is where you need to serve. So we all know that different parts of the country have different approaches to all of that, but it certainly galvanized the people of my community or our community here in Ngāti Hine. For instance, my father immediately enlisted, as did his brother, as did his cousin Sir James Henare, and eventually off they went to war. And thank God those ones all returned.
Oh, nice.
But the point I make is that how Ngāti Hine needs to stand up and be prepared to lead on some of the bigger issues, because although we say we will speak for ourselves as Ngāti Hine, we're definitely shoulder to shoulder with everybody else in Ngāpuhi and Tai Toketo when it comes down to it.
Tēnā koe.
You know, you can go on to Matua Kukara, on Google, and Ngāpuhi declares war on Germany. It was printed in the New Zealand Herald of the time, and people were saying, holy bloody hell, Ngāpuhi's declaring war on Germany.
I think it's fascinating with the hui that they had then, and it was not even, was it 80? When was the Battle of Ruapekapeka?
Yeah, it was not long.
Well, it ended in January 1846, so it was still fresh in people's minds.
Very fresh. I mean, and this is the grandson of Kawiti, Te Riri Mutunga ki Ruapekapeka. Yeah, and I think it's pertinent. We're talking about this on this day, the 2nd of April, the third day, 155 years ago. This was the last day of battle at Ōrākau. And then 150 years ago, 152 years, I think, ago, this was the day that Maunga Pohatu was stormed by the police. Yeah, freaky, how they matched up the
days,
Orako date and Maunga Puatu date.
Yeah.
But it might be, I think it's valuable, Peter, maybe we have a little, you kōrero a bit about Rua Peka
Yeah,
Peka.
definitely valuable.
And Kawiti.
Yeah. Where would you like to start?
How long is a piece of string? Kea koe te tikanga.
Kaya we.
Well, put it this way. Kawiti refused to sign Te Tiriti o Waitangi on February the 6th, 1840. He eventually did sign in May, but only through being convinced by the Pākehā of that time that he would not lose his mana motu hake. But 5 years later, things were starting to erode the mana of Kawiti and Ngāti Hine. So Kawiti received hone heke here in Waiomio at his whare called Te Ahuareka. And hone heke arrived and placed his mere paunamu on the ground before Kawiti. And it was smeared with tūtai tangata, human excrement.
Okay.
And there were no words needed to be exchanged. Kawiti realised that what hone heke was saying was that mere paunamu was the mana and the rangatiratanga of Māori living at that time. And the tūtai, the excrement, were the Pākehā people and their laws. So what Kawiti did say to hone heke was, o tō tātou kaupapa, me poroporo ngā ringa me ngā waiwai o te Pākehā. So basically, there was a pact between them there and then that they would go to war against the British. So, look, to put a long story short, on March the 11th, 1845, Kawiti and others attacked Kororareka, now known as Russell. There was a diversion while hone heke went to Maiki Hill and chopped down the flagstaff of the British for the fourth time. By the end of the day, the Pākehā had left, evacuated Russell and retreated to Auckland. And there they, reading accounts of the British themselves, they cowered for a couple of months. But they had sent for troops from Sydney, and the 58th Regiment and the 99th and other troops were shipped to the Bay of Islands to bring our tupuna to heal. So there were a number of battles. I shouldn't say smaller ones because they were just as significant. For instance, they burnt the pā of Otuihu belonging to Pomare of Ngāti Manu and other pā. And then they went on a full-scale battle to the shores of Lake Omapere, up closer to Kaikohe, where, for instance, Kawiti's son Taura was amongst the casualties. So both sides eventually withdrew from the battlefield, not having got the upper hand. So that was about May, and then June, they ended up at Ohaiwai, Pā, and that was an absolute mess for the British because they foolishly charged the Pā, and between, say, 5 and 7 minutes, they had 100 casualties lying on the ground in front of Ohaiwai Pā. They just got mown down by the defenders made up of our tupuna who were inside.
Yeah.
So that was July the 1st, 1845. And immediately Kawiti had said, ko rangatira koutou I roto I o koutou takiwa, ko te pakanga hau I runga I tōku anō whenua. So he then built the Rua Peka Peka between, say, August and Christmas of 1845. The British arrived with 1,500 troops and about 500 loyal Māori to the British cause. And inside the pā, Rua Peka Peka was between 400 and 500 defenders. And the Pākehā literally, they brought up the big cannons then, 32-pounders, pounded the palisades. And eventually, and I think many people know the story, while the defenders were having a karakia at the back of the pā, the British overran it, basically. And there's some conjecture whether they were having karakia or they were trying to draw them into the bush behind the pā. But whatever happened, that was the culmination of the battles between our iwi up here and the Pākehā. And then everybody knows it then eventually rolled out into Taranaki, Tainui, Tauranga Moana, and, which is now the pipapa of Te Pūtake o Te Riri. So, that's a little bit of a summary of Rua Peka Peka, but one thing that I can add is that while we were defending the pā, nowadays we all know too that some of our tupuna were the British. For instance, Corporal John Sherrington of the 58th Regiment. Ngāti Hine is full of Sherringtons now. We're descended from all who were involved.
That was one of my pātai, the links of the colonial soldiers and then the iwi of the area. Were there any others? Is that where the Wynyards came in? Or?
Yeah, they were, and the Wynyards are one of the more pronounced names in Ngāti Hine and even throughout Ngāpuhi, because there were a number of brothers. The Wynyards who came to settle in Ngāti Hine are now known as the Henares. So,
kia ora.
Penny Henare in Parliament, he's... it's no accident that his email address is called Kotifero.
Kai, kia ora, kai.
Kia ora, Penny.
Kia ora, Penny. Kotifero. Kia ora whakaro e kara. What is it about Ngāti Hine leadership? Because it starts, mai rāno starts from Hine Amaru. And it comes again and through Te Ruki Kawiti and then to his mokopuna. But then also in recent times through Tāhemi, eri mahenare, heke iho. Kia ora whakaro, how i pērā ai?
I think in traditional times, Ngāti Hine is no different to any other iwi hatu around the country. But in more contemporary times, you only have to listen to what Kawiti said as his ohaki immediately after the Battle of Rua Peka Peka, which I won't go through all of the lines. But one of them was, Kei poi Pākehā koutou a muri nei. He was basically saying to us, whatever you do, resist assimilation.
Tēnā koe.
So I suppose in more contemporary times, one of the things that Ngāti Hine has benefited from, which others may not have, is we retained all of our whenua.
Kia ora. Tika tau.
So in a pai tūranga waiwai te tangata, our people are farmers, we're still on the land, we're still practicing the things we've always practiced, our marae.
Too much so.
So that's provided us with a basis to hold on to many of the things that we hold dear. And what I know and others know is that in 1970s there was a survey done on where is Te Reo Māori still spoken predominantly as a language of everyday conversations. And according to that survey, the areas were Ruatoki, Ngāti Hine and Te Kao. While that may not be the case so much these days, and certainly in the mid-70s, Te Reo Māori, because the people were on the land, they were farming the land, and they knew no other language other than Te Reo Māori. In fact, my tupuna couldn't even speak English. So to attempt to answer your question, koe una wetahi āhuatanga.
Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
And bringing up Te Reo Māori and talking about Ngāti Hine leadership, one of the things I'm reminded of, sticks in my memory, was the tangihanga of Te Ariki Nui Tātai Rangi Kāhu and the whai kōrero of Erima. I was there through the whole tangi. I was there when Ngāpuhi came one day, Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu, and the next day Erima came on again. I think he was already there, but he came on again with Ngāti Hine. And again he referred to the tuna. He used the analogy of the tuna and the hinaki, and putting the hinaki out after a storm or not. Ka waiho au tērā kōrero ki reira. But yeah, I'm reminded of him and our links e kōrero nei mo te kingitanga, particularly with the story with ko te tama a Kawitine, ko Maihi, me te ringi.
Te ringi taimana.
Yeah, te ringi taimana. Which I think is a good yarn. Well, I've only heard whispers about the ringi taimana, but we go out to kawhia a bit fishing, and whenever I pull a snapper up, I think maybe I might find a ringi taimana.
Try and find one.
Koe nā ka hoki aku whakaro, kia koe tahi ko rangatira hoki mātau I a koe, rangatira koe
Yeah.
no tō iwi.
E kara mau e whakawhānui wena kōrero, if you could perhaps elaborate on that. Just to show, we talked about the ties of Ngāti Hine to Tainui, Waikato, and there's also a significant or a special relationship between kingitanga and Ngāti Hine. Mau pēr e whakawhānui wena kōrero.
This is what I know, and these are the stories told to me by my mother in particular, and others like Sir James Henare. When Mahi Kawiti succeeded on his father Kawiti in 1854, he set about to do good on the ohaki left by his father, by Kawiti. Added to the line I said earlier about kia kaua koutou e, or kei poipake hakoutou a muri nei. Another line he said was, waiho kia kakati te namu I te wharangi o te puka puka, o reira ka tahuri atu ai. Now, you can put your own interpretation on that, but our literal translation is, when the sandfly nips at the pages of the book, you must stand up for our rights, basically. We've held on to that through each generation. For his son, for Mahi Kawiti, and not necessarily in relation to the kingitanga and Waikato Tainui, Mahi Kawiti stayed in the same whare, and he also built a two-story, believe it or not, a two-story building beside his father's whare, Te Ahuareka, which in the 1860s is pretty unheard of, having a two-story house beside a whare runanga.
The forefront of architecture, Ngāti Hine.
Ngāti Hine architecture.
Yeah, so a little bit later on, at the time where the kingitanga was being mooted, Tawhiao came north on a steamer into the Bay of Islands, so that was on the east coast, and came up the Taumarere River and then made his way to Waiomi, to the whare. And by all accounts, the kaupapa was to determine Ngāti Hine's position on supporting the kingitanga. Now, they carried out their tikanga and they dined, etc. And then during the night, they all went to sleep on the bottom floor of this whare, and its name was Marama Tautini. But during the course of the night, Kawiti withdrew upstairs to sleep with his wahine, with his rurui. By all accounts, upon awakening in the morning, Tawhiao realised that Kawiti was no longer on the same level, that he was on the floor above, and took exception to that. He'd been given a diamond ring by Mahi Kawiti to seal their relationship, but according to the stories that I've heard, Tawhiao then left. He departed Waiomi and Ngāti Hine, having felt slighted by the actions of Mahi Kawiti. So when he got out into the Bay of Islands, back onto the steamer and heading back down towards Waikato Tainui in Auckland, he took off the ring and threw it overboard. And yet, a little bit later on, and this is fact, a fisherman was out fishing, and when he gutted one of the tamure, one of the snappers that he caught, he came across the ring in its gut, and he advertised it in the local paper, the Northern Iwi of the time. And then it came to the notice that this was the ring that Mahi Kawiti had given over to Tawhiao. And as a result of that whole story, there are a number of wahine in each generation in Ngāti Hine called ringi taumana, more commonly known as ringi. So there are many ringis in Ngāti Hine. So, yeah, look. And then in more modern times, for instance, on our wall in Mototau, our whare tupuna Manukoroki, is the saying of Te Poea, ka mahi ahau, ka ino i ahau, ka moe ahau, which was put up on the wall because she was a frequent visitor to Mototau and coming up to meet with Tau Henare for all of the things that were happening during their time as contemporaries. So it's basically sealed a relationship between not only Ngāti Hine and Te Kingitanga, but more a close relationship between te kingi, te poe and te kingitanga of that time through each of the generations. So from Tau Henare to his son, Sir James Henare, to his son, Erima Henare, to his son, Penny Henare. So whatever our rangatira in that line are doing, na tau te karanga ki a Ngāti Hine, ko tūmai Ngāti Hine ki te tautoko, i te whanau o ngā Henare, ara ko ngā Wynyard, whaino atu ki te kingitanga. Yeah, that's more of a modern day relationship, given the relationship between Tāwhiao and Mahi Kawiti and Hini Ngāri no being brought north to be betrothed to the Kawiti whānau.
Kia ora.
Cool.
Kia ora. Yeah, it's wicked how...
It's wicked.
Wicked. It's wicked how it started with some differences and now it's changed with the, say, what Te Puia and Tauhenare did to sort of reshape that relationship.
Yeah.
I like how there's lots of, wahine and Ngāti Hine with the name Ringi Taimana.
Yeah, me too.
So you got Ngāti Hine Puke Puke Rau and you've got Ngāti Hine Ringi Ringi Rau.
Ringi Ringi Rau, kia ora.
Kau e pāma mai mara e kōrero noio. Hoi anō e hoa, wrapping up, hea o tūmanako mō tō rahi. What are your dreams for Ngāti Hine? Hea te Ngāti Hine o a pōpō?
E hoa kei roto i tēnā kōrero Ngāti Hine o ka mā Ngāti Hine anō a Ngāti Hine e kōrero.
Kia ora.
Probably the interpretation of that is self-determination. These would be the Pākehā interpretative words I'd use for that mantra, I suppose. But it's also self-reliance.
Kia ora.
So whatever happens, we are building towards being self-sufficient on our own lands, whether we be individuals, whānau, marae, hapu, that we don't have to rely on the government. We just rely on ourselves. So, and above all things, to protect our most vulnerable people, whether they be kaumātua kuia or our young people. So having housing, employment, mahi runga te whenua, all of those things, in trying to answer your question, self-reliance amongst all things is dear to us. And with self-reliance, call it our mission statement, is kia pūmau ki te tū o Ngāti Hine. We can do all of those things about self-reliance, but if we aren't true to our essence, we're wasting our time in terms of our tikanga and our reo. That's the backbone, but eventually getting kai on the table and all those things are the real important things to Ngāti Hine.
Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, e te keteriki, kua ora e nei tangariki i a tātou kōrero, i hāpaitia maroto i tō keteriki ki roto i te puna wai o kōrero hō puapua nui, me te kete nui o nā mātauranga, kua tohaina ki a mātau o tira ki ngā taringa o Aotearoa me te ao whānui. Nō reira, ka mihi rā ki a koe e tai, e hoa, e te rangatira ka mihi ki a koe.
E mihi ana ki a koutou katoa e haka korikori nei i taku arero, taku hinengaro, kia putai e nei kōrero, hoino hei whakaarotanga mo te katoa. Nā reira, tēnā koutou.
Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
O e te iwi, ka nui e rā kōrero.
Hohonu.
Yeah.
Tāhua ngā kōrero.
Tino pai. E mihi atu ana. And hei tautoko i ngā kōrero nei, anei te waiata o te wiki.
Hine amaru.
Ane ngā uri o hine amaru, te tupuna au e. He waine whakaiti umari e. Hei ropi tana uri anga mai. I hoki anga e kei ho, yara hiri ko hine amaru. Hine amaru Te tupuna kai arahi I te hapu o Ngāti Hine I roto Waiomi o Ka puta mai I te kopu o te whenua E kumara e tangata Te whaia kai angaki I te whenua Te whaia kai angaki I te whenua Kia pai ai te tupu o te kumara I ngā mara Hine amaru Te tupuna kai arahi I te hapu o Ngāti Hine I roto Waiomi o Ka puta mai I te kopu o te whenua E kumara e tangata E waine tu e kore pahe mo te iwi E tane tu ka putanga tātai ngā kōrero Ngāti Hine Hine amaru Te tupuna kai arahi I te hapu o Ngāti Hine I roto Waiomi o Ka puta mai I te kopu o te whenua He kumara e tangata Hine amaru Hine amaru Hine amaru
Wow, didn't that just take you back?
Wow.
Yeah, wow, all right.
There's...
I
Are
could
you
see
worrying about the waiata or the kōrero?
Oh, I was wowing about the kōrero.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was our waiata.
I gotta find out what that tune
Te
comes
Nea
from.
Maru.
It's like from an old, like 50s Hawaii. I could see myself in an old diner in
And
Las
a cheap
Vegas.
aloha shirt.
Yeah, cheap aloha shirt. Yeah, listening
Some
to
Yeah.
Trying
ketchup
to look-
stains
Eating a
on your
burger,
shirt.
maybe. Grilled cheese sandwich.
Gucci sandals with an Elvis
Gold
hairdo.
silver, yeah. With
yeah.
an Alva
Elvis,
hairdo. Oh.
Elvis hairdo.
Hoi anō e te iwi, koe nā te waiata o te wiki, hei tautoko I ngā kōrero. But yeah, the kōrero, was...
Yeah, that was wow.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that
I
was me.
learned so much, and there's so much that I want to go and like rangaho after that.
Yeah. The way that Pita Tipene talks is that's how a lot of the leadership talks. You know, you talk about self-determination and yeah, they actually practice it a lot more than
Yeah.
a lot of people realise that Ngāti Hine are really staunch in their ways.
I think he done very well in answering that question because, it's hard to talk about yourself and, he was very humble about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I could tell it was difficult for him to answer because he's talking about his iwi and, when you talk about leadership, us as Māori don't really want to...
It's hard to self-promote.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But I know what you mean when you talk about Ngāti Hine leadership, but not just that, but just there's something about Ngāti Hine, and I've probably said this about all the iwi o te wiki, but definitely there's, there's, I don't know, you can't put your finger on it, something about...
They have that je ne sais quoi.
Must be those silver belly tuna.
The Silver Valley tuna, yeah.
Yeah. Me too, I got heaps out of that, always do.
Yeah.
Always do,
hello.
man.
E ho me e whakarongo ana koe, thank you again very
Ai,
much.
tēnā rawa atu koe.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will generate some discussion from other members of Ngāti Hine.
Kia ora. Yes, as I always will.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, for him to try and retell a story on behalf of his iwi,
Yes.
and just like many other people that have spoken on behalf of the iwi,
Yep.
quite reluctant, say they'll start with by all accounts or
Yeah,
according to,
Yeah.
because it's hard to be the gospel of
Yeah,
of the iwi
yeah.
or
And
something.
because stories vary from place to place, and like that might be one version of it where
Yeah.
there's another one.
Yeah, and I think we'll be, to kia koutou e te hunga whakarongo to our listeners. As we've said, these are tasters.
Yeah.
You got to put more than a taste in that one. You got,
Yeah.
you
Almost
got,
got taste
got a starter, then you got the entree, and you got sort of nearly into the mains almost.
Yeah.
In that short bit of time. Engari, haere ki te rangahau i ngā kōrero.
Yep.
If you want to find out more about Ngāti Hine, Ngāti Hine Amaru, puke rau.
Puke rau.
Hoi anō, ko tātou tērā.
Ko tātou.
Yeah,
Ai.
ko tātou.
No reira, e mihi atu ana mātou, kei a kōru ana kupu whakamutu ngā e homa.
E mihi ana kia koutou e manawa nui mai ki enei punua pāho a mātou, no mātou ke te whiwhi i a wiki whakaputa anu
definitely.
enei kōrero hei kete, hei kai mā koutou kete.
Koina.
E mihi ana kia koutou katoa and kia kōrua. Nice to be here again with you to find specimens.
Tēnā hoki koe.
It's always a pleasure to be here. And yeah, thanks everybody out there. Keep on listening and we'll keep on doing the do.
Ai, ko mātou tēnei, ko te whānā apanui, ko ngā puhi, ko raukaua, me ki ko te wānanga o Aotearoa, e mihi atu ana. He kuaha whānui e puare ana ki ngā iwi katoa, hei ko ngā maira.
Ki o, whakarongo ki te tangi a te kori mako. Kōrero flowing out the hook of force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā ko nā whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira whakarongo pi kari mai. Hare mai, o Taringa hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
Taringa. He mea tuku nā te wānanga o Aotearoa. To listen to more episodes, search for us on your podcast app and subscribe, or go to soundcloud.com/TW-OA. Taringa. Whakarongo mai.